if you've just got this concrete, second you put it in tension, it snaps. What you really need is something in there to withstand the tensile forces. The best one is steel. Construction sites don't use reinforced concrete as much as they use post and pre-tensioned. Residential work is basically done reinforced. Commercial sites, it's cheaper to post-tension or pre-tension concrete. Post-tensioning is the cheaper one that's generally done in situ. Uses less material, costs a lot less. So what do we mean? Pre-tension. Let's say I'm building a concrete slab. I build a strong frame around it. Both ends. Before I pour the concrete in, I get a steel cable and I pull that steel cable absolutely tight. There you go, there's 3 cables. I've just pulled those cables absolutely tight. I pour the concrete in and I'll wait 7 days with that tension on the cables. The concrete sets around those cables that are under tension. Now after 7 days, I release that. And the concrete now, and I'll just grab the ends of the cables in. Those cables are physically embedded in the concrete, but they're not running down a tube, they are embedded in the concrete. What I have now, or it could be running down a tube. I could run them down a tube and just on the end make sure I have got a clamp. It's really super tight. Tightly bound to that cable and will never leave. It could even be welded to it. Or it's a screw thread. I better talk about reinforcement again in a second. So that pre-tensioned concrete, put the tension, pour the concrete in, after 7 days take the tension off. Time consuming, but what I have here now is on the surface, or the concrete, is now going back to what you've done on beam analysis. That concrete's now in compression because the cables are pulling it in. Which means if I get a crack on the surface, that tensile force is resisting the crack growing. To break the beam, I've got to overcome the tensile forces. Most modern buildings, however, post-tensioned. They get the slab, lay out a slab for a building, say. Down the bottom, they have got rectangular trays. About that long, that square. They just run a rectangular tray all the way down and just run cables through it and just leave them there. Then after the concrete's cured, 28 days, you come along, you lock one end off, and on the other end, you get a screw thread, a screw jack, and you just pull the cable tight. Then once it's tight where you want it, you lock off the other end, and then that cable is just pulling in non-stop and forcing tension into the concrete. That is a lot cheaper to do than this. Uses a lot less steel because you can get a lot higher forces.